Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you on into the Cat Country 96 Birds Recap, brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by our friends at Banko Beverage. It is Kevin Crockett with you. Sam Malone on his way back here just now. Don't tell Facebook. We got to turn the music off up in this place. But getting kick-started here. Week one in the books. I think if we all had to talk about how to come away from this game, you would say, all right, take the win, take the dub, move on, try to take it and run with it. And that's exactly what the Eagles are doing right now. News is out about Nakobe Dean and his foot injury as Sam Malone comes on back in here. Hey, Sam, thank you for taking care of that.
Well, that's what I do.
Was just saying, I feel like it's if you blindly say to anybody, I feel like any team, no matter how good you think they are, before week one, you just say you got the win.
Right.
Came away, you got the win.
Correct.
I'm trying to convince myself messy conditions, right? Ugly game on the road against the Bill Belichick team that had 8 months to prepare for you.
Tom Brady night.
I'm trying to convince myself of all the reasons why I shouldn't let this one stew the way that I feel like it's stewing. But do you feel like there's a stew with you as well?
I don't feel like they played Eagles football. It didn't feel like I was watching Eagles, especially on offense. Now, I know the 4th and 2 where they went for it late in the game. To me, I know it's a 4th and long too. I get it. But to me, that reminds me of at least line them up. Line up Jalen under center. At least to try to draw him off. If you don't, you're going to do that push.
Yeah.
And they didn't attempt to do any of that. And it just, to me, it didn't seem like Eagles football. But does this count as beating Tom Brady at home? I think it does.
I'll
because
count it.
He was there. Yeah, so we beat Brady at home again, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's twice. Take that, Tom.
You know, again, there were a lot of ugly games yesterday. Cleveland-Cincinnati wasn't the best played Joe Burrow game.
Sure.
So it's easy for – and I caught myself. I'm like, Cincinnati's not going to play like this all year.
Right.
Pittsburgh's not going to play like this all year.
Right.
Probably the Giants like this all year. Why can't I convince myself the Eagles aren't going to play sloppy like this all year, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you add all those things up, and again, you just take into consideration the conditions. Again, I was going to bring up that Cincinnati-Cleveland game later.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that's ready to say that Cincinnati's not a playoff team or not a good team or any of those things. But to your point, it just, it didn't at any point look super succinct.
Yes.
Like it was, even when it was 16-0, it still felt, I never felt like, they're going to blow the doors off of them in this game.
No.
And whether that was the Bill Belichick effect or whether it was the weather or whatever it might be, it just never felt like it was going to do that for me. Mm-hmm. It is the Cat Country 96 Birds Recap brought to you by Miller Lite and Banko Beverage. We are here at PJ. You want to hold up some swag for us? PJ Willihan's in Bethlehem High Point Boulevard. This is an Eagles bucket hat. We got some swag to give out. We got some hats just like these. Show them to the people. Get a little closer.
Ready? Look at this. The Kelly Green Eagles hat.
Throwback.
Looks like we're wearing. Beautiful.
Throwbacks. We got some of those to give out. And koozies just for
Eagles, Miller Lite.
You can't have enough of those.
Look at that.
Excellent. So come on down here. We're going to be live for about 20 minutes here.
Look at this.
Hanging out. Come by and say, hey, ooh.
Miller Lite shirt. We have a bunch of these.
We do. Actually, quite literally.
Grab that.
We do have a bunch of these. I don't want to mess with the microphone. But come on down, say hey. So I think going into the season, as we kind of look at the game from yesterday, I think going into the season where everybody felt really good was, okay, the offense, all these pieces are coming back.
Right.
The offense is going to look really good. You only replaced one starter on the offense with a guy who was a high draft pick in Cam Jurgens. And, I don't know what it was. You get those 16 points, obviously the Slay pick 6, a big part of that. But you go through all those drives, you go 3 and out. It just didn't feel like there was a rhythm. Now, to the Bill Belichick modus operandi every time he plays defense is we're going to take away the best thing that you do.
Correct.
And Dallas Goedert has been Jalen Hurts' security blanket for as long as the two of them have been together. So he takes Dallas Goedert out of the game. You'd still love for them to try to find that rhythm, get that going a little bit for Jalen to kind of get him in a rhythm. But, it just stalled. The offense just felt like it stalled for the better part of the day.
I was actually looking at some of the preseason games, and I'm thinking the offense, looked better during the preseason games than they did last night. And at one point, I actually said, kiddingly, of course, so the tight ends aren't active today. So we didn't dress any of the tight ends. We have 3 of them. None of them are dressed. Our running backs, we didn't dress any of the running backs. I don't understand the offense, as we're sticking with the offense. what we stopped handing the ball off. We stopped pitching the ball. I know Kenneth Gainwell wasn't getting 6 yards a carry, or I think he was getting 4 yards a carry.
But it felt like it was that first drive.
It looked like it was
working.
working.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they went away from it. You don't, especially with Swift in there now, you don't need to have Jalen running the football as much as he was yesterday. That fumble that Jalen had was huge. Luckily, they recovered from it. But the thing I was concerned watching it was the way he took that hit.
Sure.
The first thing I thought of at this point was,
got thumped.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. He can't be taking those hits. That's why you have Kenny Gainwell and Swift and Boston Scott back there to hand the ball off. And luckily, Hurts was not injured on that play. And it's funny because the first thing I'm like, all right, I don't even care if we lose the ball. At this point, just make sure Jalen Hurts is okay. That's what it was coming down to yesterday.
Well, I think what I took away from that moment was a design play for Jalen to take the ball. Is though they go out and get DeAndre Swift, though they get Rashad Penny.
Inactive.
Right. I think, and part of the reason he's inactive is we're going to get to, there's injury. Nakobe Dean, who's just broke, so we'll get to all the injuries and stuff like that, who's up, who's down. But it felt to me like they trust Kenny Gainwell. They trusted him in the playoffs. Maybe that's not 100% there just yet with DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, which is maybe why he wasn't dressed, why you only saw a little bit of Boston Scott. So it's hard because I think for me, for any player that's playing, there's rhythm to a football game. I remember getting frustrated when Deuce would rotate the running backs back in the day, because whether it was Shady getting good yardage or whether it was Miles Sanders was getting good yardage. And I wasn't the only one. We had a lot of people complaining like, hey, if they're going, why are we switching them out? Where did that guy go? He had a good start to the game. Well, Kenny Gainwell got off to a great start in the game. And then, limited touches for DeAndre Swift. He has a drop. Limited touches for Boston Scott. You barely even saw him yesterday. But it just felt like, I think, as we talked in the preseason about the issues with the backup quarterback and Marcus Mariota, I think the thought process with when the Eagles decided to go that route, even when Mariota had a difficult preseason, was we saw Gardner Minshew go out in Dallas last year and throw the ball all over the place, and it wasn't enough. And so I think maybe they looked at the offseason and flipped that around and said, okay, well, we're not going to try to outscore you with our backup quarterback. We're going to do what got us in the playoffs 2 seasons ago, which is run the football, be a really good running football team. And I feel like they just went to lean into that yesterday early on. The Patriots adjusted, and then the Eagles' adjustments from there weren't great. It felt to me, watching the game, as Jalen couldn't get his feet under him, felt unsettled, felt like maybe he missed some opportunities. There was a post with Dallas Goedert. That was right. It felt like Jalen wasn't settled, wasn't relaxed back there. And that's a credit to the New England Patriots, but it just felt like, and whether that's Brian Johnson's game plan, whether that's just first game jitters a little bit, it just felt like New England kind of dictated the game to the Eagles on the offensive side of the ball more than the Eagles dictated the game to them, which is something that we really haven't seen from this Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts football team.
And that's a really good point. And one thing I was thinking of too, you have 2 brand new coordinators. These aren't excuses, by the way. This is fact.
Sure.
You have 2 brand new coordinators. First time going against Bill Belichick team.
Yeah.
Not only first time going, as your said coordinators in the NFL, but here we go, brand new under Jalen Hurts. You're just coming off of a Super Bowl. You're just coming off, Eagles. I don't want to say made it look easy last year, but it go back to the first game against Detroit last year. They got out of Detroit with, I think, a 3-point win, if I'm not mistaken. So, you put all this on again. Going back to the beginning of what we talked about, I will go back to the entire day, the rain and the cooler conditions and the Tom Brady day and all that stuff. And the 2 new coordinators, I think, is very important. And the halftime adjustments, I think they did a pretty good job, especially on defense with the halftime adjustments. I get it. They ran the ball down 6-7 plays towards the end of the game. I understand. But for the most part, I think the halftime adjustments, the Eagles defensive coordinator did a pretty good job with that. That's something to build on.
Yeah, sure. I got to say, Sean Desai, the big play for me in that game was the Christian Ellis blitz at the end.
Yes.
That makes Mac Brown step up to the pocket, that collapses and lets that defensive line get a hold of him a little bit. I think that's what, the comparisons to Jonathan Gannon are going to be there all season long.
Correct. Correct.
Their only sacks in the game. It took a while to get there, but they came in the fourth quarter, both of them. And I think maybe that's what people were hoping to see a little more from Jonathan Gannon last year was a big play. Left a big gap open in the field, sending Christian Ellis on that play. And fortunately, that defensive line is so good that when Ellis got through and wasn't able to make the play, your big defensive tackles were able to come in and make plays. And they were close a lot yesterday.
Yes, they were. They were.
I think the template a lot of teams are going to take now is they're going to see how quick Mac Jones got rid of the football because they know how good that defensive line is.
Sure.
And now, I said going into the game, I said this game didn't go exactly how I thought it was going to go. I thought the Eagles were going to be a little bit more comfortable in a 24-20 win. That said, to me, the biggest concern, I think, for a lot of people was the middle of the field. How are the linebackers going to play? Yeah. Reed Blankenship, who didn't play at all in preseason, they've got a lot of faith in him. That second safety spot, we didn't even know who was going to start. It ends up being Justin Evans, who that group combined, not a great day.
Right.
And tight ends, 8 catches for 89 yards between Hunter Henry and Gesicki. That's where I think teams are going to try to take advantage against this Eagles defense. And with Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson coming to town, it could be a really interesting game on Thursday night.
It will be an interesting game. Going back to the defense of Reed Blankenship, did you see the play where he made a tackle on, I think it was a tight end or a fullback, whatever, as he was being held? And he was being all positions. He was turned in every position he can think of, and he still and there was a penalty on that play on the offense,
right?
And he still had enough in him to make that. That's a gamer right there. I look at those plays and like, all right, he might not be the best safety in football or this. He's the youngest, one of the young guys. That's fine. Start playing like that, and he's going to be loved here. He's going to make a lot of plays.
Sure, and I think it just. Look, I think there's an obvious reason. He only played 10 games last year when CJ got hurt and still injured. Found his way to get into the defense. That just feels like the news. We mentioned that there was Nakobe Dean news out multiple weeks. Is the report? Is that IR? Is that 4 weeks? Obviously, with that Vikings game hurts. Just around the corner. They said there were reports yesterday. I think it was John Clark from NBC Sports that said he was leaving in a walking boot, which doesn't always necessarily mean something terrible.
Yeah.
For a quick turnaround on a Thursday night, I personally felt pretty confident that it was like, okay, they're not going to let him go. Yeah. Christian Ellis comes in, much like Zach Cunningham at times looked a little out of place.
He did, yeah.
But showed up at the biggest moment there at the end of the game in the fourth quarter when they really needed some stops. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Sean decides to massage this defense a little bit. And how are the calls going to come in? Christian Ellis started getting the calls.
Yep.
Just because Zach Cunningham hasn't been here long enough to make those calls and make those adjustments. So that's going to be a really fascinating thing to watch if Nakobe Dean is out for an extended period of time, how the middle of that defense is going to kind of survive.
And, they're going to have to call someone up, I believe, off of the practice squad, I would think, for this quick turnaround on Thursday night.
Right.
So we'll have to see who that is.
Nicholas Morrow, who you would think who they got.
He had a good preseason.
Yeah.
Very good preseason.
But again, it's, they went out and they got – so Miles Jack ultimately retired, but Miles Jack pretty much came in and took over as that number one defensive linebacker as soon as he got here. Then they kind of went to Cunningham. It almost feels like by default because maybe Nicholas Moreau throughout the preseason wasn't – they kind of saw what they had in him.
True.
Christian Ellis, again, was a name that kept popping up through OTAs, through preseason as a guy who's making plays, but it's a lot different when you're doing that on the practice field, maybe not in full pads versus when the lights are bright and the rain's coming down in New England. But credit to him. When his number got called yesterday, he made some plays to show up and be a difference maker. Speaking of difference makers, number 9 overall pick looked like a pretty good football player yesterday. Jalen Carter certainly made an impact in the game right off the bat. Great to see Jordan Davis as well. He got the fumble that Cunningham recovered. Fletcher Cox was great yesterday, especially in that fourth quarter. Good to see that even as that boat was getting a little tipsy in the water, man, that defensive line really showed up and played a heck of a fourth quarter.
Did you notice Jordan Davis was on the field a lot more yesterday than he was during any time of any game last year? And that's due to, you know what, he's I don't want to say a different defense, but he's better this year. He's in better shape this year. This is his second year.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're not taking Jordan Davis off the field on a passing down or 3rd and 9 or whatever, and they're keeping him on there is a really good sign for that defensive front four. And like you were saying, man, that they struggled. They stripped Ezekiel Elliott, which was a huge play. That front four did a great job yesterday towards the end of the game. I know it was a little tough, we were saying, but I'm excited about the defensive line. I'm excited about Thursday night's home game. I'm excited about the fans. They're going to get all crazy. We're going to be wearing our green jerseys, not our white jerseys. I'm one of those superstitious guys. I think we win in green. I know we didn't win the Super Bowl in green, but anyway, I'm pumped about that. This is going to be a fun year. Again, this wasn't the Eagles that I am used to at this point. But I think the Eagles will find themselves again. Watch that fly on Thursday night. This is going to be exciting. Just it's neat watching that defensive line play. Was my whole point here.
Yeah, and if they can kind of, we saw it last season, generate that kind of pressure, generate sacks. Yeah. It's just, man, they're playing a lot better quarterbacks.
They are
this year
already.
And if that is the blueprint that the Patriots put out, it's, hey, we're going to beat you over the middle of the field.
Yeah.
It's something that they're definitely going to have to shore up. But again, it's week 1.
Yep.
Messy conditions. I think especially if you're the road team. If you're the home team, I think you want to see your home team give you a little bit more than maybe what the Eagles did yesterday. But to go on the road, messy conditions, win the way you did, come home, get a W.
Yep.
I think that's something that we'll all take. Quick turnaround, not a lot of time to sit here and you hope where the cleanup is not blowing timeouts on special teams because guys aren't out there on time.
Yep.
You're hoping that you're protecting the football. Again, the Eagles won the turnover battle, and that's probably the difference in the game, especially because you got the pick 6 there by Darius Slay. You hope that it's just a little bit of cleanup. It's not going to be a polished product. It's not going to be perfect. Look at what the Minnesota Vikings did yesterday at home against Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
But, that said, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, they're going to be coming ready to play on Thursday night in Philadelphia.
All about adjustments and game planning. And we went almost 20 minutes, Crockett, without mentioning the player of the game yesterday.
Jake Elliott.
Yeah. The guy, 13 points for Jake Elliott. I mean, he was 4 for 4.
Yeah. And big kicks, 50-yard kicks, clutch time. I have to give love to Aaron Sipas, too, because I have been on the find anyone else that can compete for this job. And a big part of the reason why, in my mind, Aaron Sipas was still here after the preseason and when they had him on the practice squad was Jake Elliott's probably got a lot of faith in Aaron Sipas to hold those kicks. And that is a monster part of the equation when it comes to special teams. Obviously, Jake with a big game yesterday. The big difference when you needed those kicks to just kind of take that extra breath of he provided those kicks. He's been a Pro Bowl player before, but big kicks yesterday by Jake. Hopefully those will keep coming all season long.
Yeah,
I think I heard a statistic of he's from 56 yards and beyond with the minimum number of attempts, whatever it is, 5, 10 attempts. He's the best in NFL history.
Oh, really?
Those kicks beyond 56 yards.
Good for Jake.
We see it all the time. And not only did he make them, that 56-yarder had room to spare.
It had a few more yards on it.
He had a lot of room to spare.
How about the one that almost double doinked? But it came the Eagles' way. That's
Take them how you can get them.
Absolutely.
Take them how you can get them.
That's what you do.
On a day like yesterday in New England. So wasn't pretty, wasn't perfect.
It's okay.
It's one win in the win column. And certainly you kind of look around the league. We mentioned Cincinnati. We saw what happened to the New York Giants last night against Dallas.
Well, and even I think the Bears are going to be a better team than they showed yesterday.
Yeah,
I really do. I think
fair.
The Bears are not the Bears that we saw yesterday. They're gonna win some games this year. They're going to be a tough team. So, week 1, you can't just sit there and say, they're done. They're eliminated. Sure. No. There's going to be some good football on these teams that lost yesterday. And the one again, and I brought it up, the one that sticks out is the Cleveland-Cincinnati game. Cleveland will lose some, but Cincinnati is not that bad of a team where, Burrow was pressured all day long yesterday. We were actually here at PJ's yesterday for the Eagles tailgate, so I had a chance to watch pretty much all the games, and just watching all that, it's going to be a fun year.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Yep.
Hopefully the weather's nice Thursday night. I don't know what the forecast is supposed to be Thursday night, but hopefully a nice night in Philadelphia.
Yep.
As they get set for week 2. They had a lot of success week 2 against Minnesota last year in primetime light. So hopefully they can do that once again. It is the Cat Country 96 Birds Recap. It is brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banko Beverage. We're in reverse here. Banko Beverage. We've got Eagles hats, Eagles swag, all sorts of stuff here. Miller Lite swag. Come on down. We're going to be hanging out here PJ's in Bethlehem on Channersville Road, High Point Boulevard. We'll be here hanging out for a little bit longer.
Yep.
But for Sam Malone, okay, so let's early on prediction.
Sure.
Against Minnesota. What are you feeling for Thursday night?
I have the feeling it's going to be an offensive explosion for the Birds. I do. It's one of these. You know what this reminds me of, and I could be wrong, but it reminds me of the Phillies. Okay, 1 run, 2 runs, all of a sudden they get that 13-3 win. This reminds me of the Phillies, where they didn't score much at all. They scored 25. That's not bad, but it's not the Eagles 25. So I think they score 30, 35 points. It'll be close. The defense still 35-28. Birds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you got. So I love that Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator there in Minnesota because they lost a lot of pieces. He's a head coach caliber, kind of DC. I felt like Minnesota missed some plays yesterday, and I think they let Baker Mayfield and a good credit to good skill player Mike Evans, Godwin, those kinds of guys over there in Tampa Bay. Nothing to slouch at. But Minnesota let it slip away, in my opinion, late in that game. It's a whole different atmosphere on the road. We know what happens when you get pressure on Kirk Cousins. Can the Eagles make that happen? Can they generate those turnovers like they did yesterday? We'll have to wait and see. What did you say, 35-28?
35-28.
I'm going to come down a little bit off of that on you. I'm going to say 27-17 Eagles on Thursday night. I think the line is about 7 points right now.
All right.
I think the Eagles find a little bit more of a rhythm. They established Dallas Goedert, and I think they get a win at home. Kind of give us all a deep breath before they then get set for a Monday Night Football game.
That's what they need. I think the tight ends will have a big game on Thursday night as well.
I think we all need a deep breath after the game.
I guess one catch for a tight end would be a big game, wouldn't it?
It would be an improvement.
Right, exactly.
But that is going to do it for us here at PJ's.
Come on by.
We're hanging out here, so come swing by. A big thank you to my buddy Sam Malone here for the Cat Country 96 Birds Recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banko Beverage Company. You can visit them at bankobeverage.com. For the Cat Country 96 Recap, I'm Kevin Crockett, Sam Malone.
Sam Malone.
We'll catch you guys next week after the Birds and Vikings